There are a lot of claims about the media and how it is affecting the lives of everyday people. There are a lot of figures within both the internet and national television that claim that the main goal is to make the average viewer brainwashed into thinking a certain ideology, which then in turn leads to fear. In doing so, many who are in the entertainment business have to be more aware of who they associate with, or else be at risk of falling with those individuals in question. However, that mentality could end up burning bridges that you would regret later on in life.
I'm off to Malibu to see Herb Kazaz. He hates me, so I could really use some good news at the end of the day.
Oh my God, you're going to see Herb?
Hey! You ready for this?
The beginning of the episode really does an excellent job showing off the dynamics between the majority of the cast that will play a role in this episode. I think they do a good job of including snippets of scenes from the previous episode that focuses on PC rather than the main trio of the show, which really emphasizes how that the previous episode was kind of a break from the main overall plot, especially considering that we've dealt with quite a bombshell of Diane being engaged with Mr. Peanut Butter, which is something I am not opposed to, as it gives us a nice little break before getting into more of a heavy plot point.
Generic 80s new wave, beep bop beep bop beep bop. This is a song from the 80s.
So witnessing the major differences of the 80s compared to the 2010s at the time, I really enjoyed how over the top all the stereotypical references are for this era. From the various signs and billboards dedicated to the items that were very popular at this time, to the song Bojack was singing in his car, basically announcing what era this is being taken place in. I really dig this because around the time Bojack came out, a lot of young adults around this time wouldn't know too much about the 80s. As I stated in a previous video, I was just graduating high school when Bojack first came out. So I think it was a quick way to dump out most of the 80s references at once to get a nice little chuckle as the setting gets introduced.
Herb Kazaz, ladies and gentlemen.
Great set, man.
Thanks, BJ. I set him up, now you knock him down.
So getting into meeting the younger version of Bojack, you can clearly see a large variety of differences between the physicality compared to his older self. Bojack's fur is more vibrant, he's more slim, and has a more positive attitude. The fact that Bojack refused to drink before his set is a big deal considering how much alcohol has driven his life in the current years. It became very clear that when his big break occurred, a lot of major changes to his personality will head his way. Now getting into meeting his other friends, we get to meet Charlotte and Herb, the man who he hurts. At this time, Charlotte and Herb are dating, but there was a hint that made this relationship seem questionable. We see that Charlotte and Herb invite Bojack to hang out with them a lot, and it does make Bojack feel like a third wheel. Usually in these situations, a third wheel subconsciously follows a couple around. However, in this case, it seems Charlotte and Herbs encourage Bojack to come with them often. It's a very minor thing, but it's certainly something to take notice of when it comes to a relationship that is supposed to be monogamous. We have to remember that this term was not really common around this time, much like a large portion of terms that are considered normal by today's standards. So in this era, it would be seen as very odd for someone to be strung along in such a way. With that in mind, we do see things that seem to line up with Bojack getting his big break, with a variety of high-class executives that seem to be enjoying Herb's set, and with Bojack's strong relationship with Herb, that on its own could lead into big things for his career. That is one of the important things to know about the business of acting. Having talent is only 20% of the work. The majority of the actual work is completely based on marketing yourself and knowing those within the industry. So with these executives taking a close eye on Herb, it would give Bojack an opportunity to shoot his shot as well.
Well, there he goes. Herb's about to hit the big time, and I'm just gonna be a small fry doing tiny commercials and eating mini quiches.
You're dead wrong. You're gonna be a big success. Herb says it to me all the time.
With Herb getting invited to an event by the ABC executives, this will be an opportunity for him to pitch a TV show. So, at this event, we are able to see the moods of a struggling artist as Bojack tries to stash keys for future meals. Oh my god, I know that struggle. So when Herb gets pulled away by one of the executives, this is the time where Charlotte and Bojack get to talk about his worry of getting left behind. Charlotte does a good job of reassuring that it won't be the case. Although, during this conversation, the way Charlotte speaks about it felt like it was more of a warning to him if he does decide to go the route of being a star actor. She refers to Bojack the metaphor of being trapped in a tar pit and Hollywood being built over it. It's a fantastic analogy as it does perceive the bright lights of LA being a facade of a lot of pain and hardship. She sees the risks of what could happen if you can get lost into that light. It doesn't see herself wanting to pursue that harsh reality. That's when she announced that she will be moving to Maine, and that she and Herb felt it was best to mutually part ways. She even goes out of her way to ask if Bojack would give her a chance if she met him before Herb did, and eventually expresses her belief that he wouldn't be able to because of his cowardice. That's a lot to take in at once, but it really shows a lot of layers of what the relationship of the three are at the end of the night. With Charlotte expressing that she's not something Herb is looking for, and how he speaks about Bojack far more often than Bojack previously thought, it also shows that Charlotte does have some feelings for Bojack as well, and that Bojack missed the opportunity to see that until now. It didn't seem like the relationship between Herb and Charlotte was bad, but it was clear that there was some disconnect between them. And that may be why Bojack was strung along with them most of the time they went out. It's a very daunting way to leave the two she was closest with, but I believe it's because she saw the writing on the wall way before the two even started to climb the hill of success.
I got a call from ABC today. They bought my TV pitch.
What? That's amazing. What's the show?
It's called Horsin' Around. So, what do you say? Want to be my star?
Seriously? Of course I do. Of course, Herb. Jesus Christ, thank you.
There it is. Yeah, I think the signs were pretty clear after the final scene with Charlotte. Turns out that Herb also had strong feelings for Bojack at the time as well. What a twist for a love triangle that was laid out that the two who were together were both vying for the guy outside of their own relationship. Though the clues that were given to us earlier became much more clear after this scene. It certainly caught Bojack by surprise, and you can easily tell Herb regretted making that decision and assured that it wasn't what Bojack was thinking. I believe this also shows how dangerous it is for Herb to come out as a gay in the way that he did to Bojack when he immediately detracts from the action he did, emphasizing that he doesn't swing that way and it was in the heat of the moment. Now, the bigger question here is, does Bojack accept Herb at this point? I think since Bojack is being asked to be the lead of Horsin' Around, he would go ahead and move past it initially because Herb gave him a huge opportunity to stamp his name into being a recognized talent in America. How he'll feel after that? Well, we'll have to see as we move on from the 80s.
Generic 90s grunge song. Everyone in Flanders. Generic 90s grunge song. Something from Seattle.
So as we enter the 90s, we see a lot of changes both in setting with a new variety of references of the era around the town, and also how much Bojack's status has improved, with a brand new convertible, wearing cool shades, and wearing his standard costume for the show. Unfortunately, his looks isn't the only thing that has changed since he started being the lead actor for Horsin' Around. When Bojack was at his peak, he became a lot more aggressive and self-centered. He doesn't have a strong understanding how certain beats in a sitcom works and berates workers that aren't acquiring his demands. This emphasizes how fame can really affect your personality when you start achieving many accomplishments. You become a lot more selfish and really express views that are less favorable. Like, it's definitely great to know that Bojack has some racist beliefs. We even see that Herb and Bojack have become very distant because of his serious attitude problem. Whatever feeling Herb has for Bojack went out the window because of his attitude change. It's unfortunate too because Herb was the one that gave him this opportunity in the first place. It was clear that Bojack is taking Herb for granted with how he is speaking to Herb in such a negative tone. And with what we know of Herb, it's not surprising that he became much more passive towards Bojack and made sly comments about him. It shows as Horseman Around gets more popular, the bridge between Bojack and Herb continues to crumble.
Bojack, goddamn horseface. Secretariat! It's happening, and it's down to you and Val Kilmer for the title role. Now listen, keep your head down and your nose clean.
Scandal breaking today surrounding the family sitcom Horsin' Around. Herb Kazaz, the show's creator, was caught tonight in an LAPD sting on public indecency.
Now Bojack is caught with a dilemma on his hooves. Of course, as soon as he got the news that he was very close to getting his dream role, Herb places Horsin' Around in a heap of controversy. Herb getting caught having public intimacy with another man is an extremely big deal in the 90s because the thought of homosexuality is nowhere near as accepting as it is today. There's a lot of layers as well when it comes to this issue. Back then, it was common to believe that homosexuality is equivalent to being a child predator. It's been spread heavily in American media at the time that gay men are only interested in those that are young and prey on them for sexual desires. Not to mention that in the 90s, HIV and AIDS were major issues as a rapid disease that spread very quickly across America. And it forever changed the way we think about health and safety within sexual intercourse. Much like how the COVID-19 pandemic changed everything within the hospitals or other medical clinics. The rate of obtaining this disease was extremely high for men, especially those within the gay community. Considering how reactionary America is, they were very quick to blame the rapidity of the disease on the LGBT community since the information about STIs were very limited compared to what we know now. So when a noticeable figure gets caught doing lewd acts with someone of the same sex, the media will be very quick to villainize them. Which is really the truth when it comes to the media. The media is a very reactionary tool. A lot of people base their beliefs on not only what they see on TV, but also hearing the main figurehead's opinions and treats it as gospel. So seeing Herb in this predicament puts the integrity of the show at huge risk, and it places Bojack's relationship with Herb into serious jeopardy.
They're gunning for me at the network, and if I get kicked off this, I won't recover. I need to know that you've got my back.
With Herb in a lot of heat with ABC, he shows the amount of desperation of trying to keep his job. So who else would you want to go to than your best friend that you have given the spotlight to? It's understandable for Bojack to not really be fully on board with helping Herb in this situation. Remember, this is the 90s we're referring to, and being allied with the LGBT community at this time was going to place you in hot water in the eyes of the public. So opening up our cultural blinders for the situation and understanding where these two stand at will help you realize why this is very difficult for Bojack to deal with. Herb has been a long-time friend and has aided Bojack into being in the spotlight for a large number of years. However, siding with Herb in this situation could plummet his career. In the end, he does choose to be by Herb's side and promises to do everything he could to get him to stay on the show.
Bojack, can we chat for a second?
Oh, here we go.
I'm not gonna waste your time with small talk. We're letting Herb go.
So, in the end, he didn't stick with Herb after all. We've seen Angela get emphasized in the early going of this episode. Seeing her featured in the middle of the three executives at the comedy set, and her being noticed at the party were two things that really hinted that she was going to play a major role. Now we know how, as she was the one to convince Bojack to stay quiet and do what he does best. She is the prime example of the girl boss attitude. She basically was the main one talking to Bojack and never gave him a chance to speak on the behalf of Herb, even finishing the sentences Bojack was going to say just as he started them. She was incredibly blunt and cutthroat, to the point where the conversation was over in just 2 minutes max. It's clear that this situation was not her first rodeo, and she made it very clear what the paths were if he decided to stick with Herb or leave him dry. In the end, Bojack did what was best for him after the amount of gaslighting Angela gave him. Bojack does make it clear that he was not proud of that decision as he gets ready for shooting the episode. And I think this was the moment where things started to go south for him in his career, since we know he never was able to pursue other things post-horsing around, and the movie he dreamed of being a part of never happened.
Bojack, well, Jesus, you look shitty. Have you been eating your guilt this whole time?
So now we get to meet the present day Herb, and he has definitely seen better days. So, Herb has been mentioned quite a few times throughout the season, and we know that the dude is dying from cancer. This shows as to why he is very skinny, and the jokes he has been making towards Bojack really hits home. It's clear that Herb has a strong resentment towards Bojack and hasn't seemed to let that go, which is crazy considering that he seems to be doing extremely well for himself, with owning a Hassan-like mansion and having his own caretaker. Huge plus for being a bear. It seems that he has fared much better than what was to be perceived initially. While everything felt pretty awkward between the two, Diane does help break the ice with talking about a certain blender.
Well, this stupid thing was like $600.
I have used mine a grand total of 0 times.
So who's it for?
Exactly. What is so great about liquids?
You know why? Juice controls the media.
Hey-oh!
With that, things have started to become easier for the two to bond and actually enjoy their time together. We even get to hear that Herb has met with other higher class people in his life and also helped raise money for certain charities to help out the world in some meaningful capacity. So even though he did lose out on his original dream, he still was able to live his life in a way that doesn't make it a regretful one. So it seemed like the two actually gained a small glimpse of hope when it came to their relationship. Although there was one thing left for Bojack to do to really confirm that the two of them can finally move on.
I feel bad about what happened.
So you're apologizing?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, I don't forgive you.
Not sure you get what's happening here. This could be the last time that
No, I'm not gonna give you closure. You don't get that.
Honestly, this was a very good choice for them when it comes to genuine storytelling. This was more than about losing the job. It was actually being there for someone when they are at their lowest. A lot of people in the LGBT community feel like they have to go through all of the obstacles in life alone just because of their sexuality. While yes, he did try to keep Herb on the show, he never really gave Herb a shoulder to lean on when he needed it the most. I think Herb completely understands that Bojack can only do so much to keep him on the project. But there are more things to life than horsing around, which is something Bojack clearly struggles understanding. Bojack forced that into being his peak compared to the others involved in the show.
Hey, BJ! Put that back, asshole!
No, you gave this to me. No.
Bojack, come on.
You know what your problem is? You want to think of yourself as the good guy. You'd probably sleep a lot better at night if you just admitted to yourself that you're a selfish goddamn coward who takes whatever he wants and doesn't give a shit about who he hurts.
And now everything comes full circle. The person that had strong feelings for Bojack expresses his belief that he is a coward. It stings because both Charlotte and Herb cared about Bojack deeply at one point. But as time went on, both ended up in his rearview mirror. The irony of it all is that they both seem to have done better without him, while his life turned for the worse. It really goes to show how the media can influence not just the people watching, but those who work in it as well. The business has really taken just about everything Bojack needed in order to achieve true happiness. The success he garnered came with a lot of sacrifices, ones that ended up taking away the people he held dear prior to his rise. He desperately wants some sort of closure to help him feel a bit better, but Herb can see through that, just like many others that are around him. So I can understand not wanting to be that for Bojack after being abandoned by him, being left alone with no one to really go to. The minimum that you can do for someone in the LGBT community is to at least be there when they need you. Bojack couldn't even do that. You have to really earn that forgiveness, and it seems to be too late when it comes to Herb.
Well, for what it's worth, I think it took a lot of guts to do what you did back there.
After that event, it was clear that Bojack was desperate for some sort of comfort, which I believe you can easily compare to the kiss to the one he shared with Herb all those years ago. Of course, the response from Diane was similar as well because of the fact that she's engaged. So that retraction from the kiss, not saying anything, and simply returning back to the car was quite clear that he made another screw up. Diane was trying her best to be a good friend to Bojack, but unfortunately, Bojack's loneliness and depression really takes a toll on him and causes him to act abruptly without giving much thought to the possible consequences. With Diane pulling away from Bojack and leaving him, the last shot we see is Bojack alone at night as we start to pan out, really emphasizing the label that was placed by his former friends. This episode really peels a lot of the layers when it comes to working inside the media in any way and how it can affect the relationships of those who are involved. It really gives us the taste of what fame can do to a person and how they react to certain situations with their public image in mind. You're expected to make sacrifices, but probably more than you would want originally. The amount of stress of the show could force you to pick up bad habits, and you realize that the amount of agency you think you have is only a facade, as the executives are the real folks that call the shots. So it really is true when you reach the peak of the mountain. There's not much room for anyone else, and it can be very lonely. And you question yourself if it's all really worth it. Until then, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.